Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Delivering a Vibrant Curriculum with J277 Computer Science. My name is Tim Wilson. I'm your host today, and I'm delighted to welcome our special guest, Keredig from OCR, who I will introduce shortly. This webinar is the latest part of the CAS Virtual Showcase, and we're into our final day of 2 weeks of over 50 webinars designed to support the CAS community. A big thank you to all of you who have attended in your droves over the past few weeks and have said such lovely things along the way. A little about me. I am one of a team of CAS community outreach managers operating throughout the country. I'm responsible for managing computing at school communities of practice across the Midlands and a large part of the Southwest, and we do this as part of the National Centre for Computing Education. Now on to our speaker. Keredig has been at OCR since September 2015 and has brought his breadth of experience from the education world to support the reform and development of the new GCSE 9-to-1 Computer Science and entry-level R354. He is a keen advocate of the challenges faced within the classroom. Keredig led on the concept and delivery of teacher delivery packs, which have become one of the flagships for the new GCSE's success with teachers. Prior to joining OCR, Keredig had 8 years of education and teaching experience across a wide range of schools, including primary, secondary, academies, and SEN sectors too. Keredig has a degree in computer science from Liverpool University and postgrads from Liverpool Hope and Cambridge universities. Outside of work, Keredig is a keen modeler, painter, gamer, and all-round geek. Hooray! Before I hand over to Keredig, a few little bits of housekeeping. So if you have questions along the way, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so this is your main and only means to ask questions or leave comments. The top of the window has an orange rectangle. This can be expanded or collapsed. If you expand it, you will find the questions tab. If you are using social media, in particular if you're tweeting, the hashtag for the event is CAS Virtual 20. Keredig's Twitter handle is OCR_ICT, and mine is CAS Midlands. Don't worry about writing these down. I will post these in the chat once Keredig begins. Anyway, that's enough from me. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Keredig. Keredig, it's all yours.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, and lovely to, I was about to say, see everybody, at least virtually see everybody. And thank you very much for taking the time over a lunch break to come and listen to my ideas on how we can sort of spice up and make a more vibrant curriculum for computer science. There have been obviously a lot of changes recently, and I think with this sort of final update for September 2020 First Teach, there is definitely potential now that sort of the actual curriculum side will not be changing, and that really gives us potential, I think, now to refocus efforts into addressing some of the other challenges which come with delivery of computer science, which is having a look at how we can improve student performance. When comparing it with other subjects, it is fairly well reported that students generally tend to perform slightly lower in computer science when comparing it to other subjects, and that's a whole topic in itself. But also, there's always this sort of reported thing that moving into secondary school gets boring, they're stuck behind desks, and it's a very different learning environment from primary school, where it's a lot more active and engaging. So whilst the core of this is around J277 and the sort of GCSE, this is actually more of use of term longitudinal. I probably made that up, but having a more sort of a broader picture of how programming engagement from primary school, year 7 and onwards actually all feeds into engaging and motivating students to firstly take GCSE. And it's testament to every teacher's hard work that the numbers of candidates at GCSE have been increasing the way they have. But at the same time, we can't be complacent. I think we all recognise the challenges faced by the computer science community, and really sort of building on the support and the efforts of the National Centre for Computing Education, the training that they're putting in, to then open up the world of computer science to children, to really engage them, and you know, the what's in it for me, well, you know, you can build the future. This is exciting. It's not just the stereotypical, and I would definitely include myself in this, sort of white male sitting there 15 hours playing games, coding with, you know, some what's-its, a 4-litre sort of stack of Coke, as in the drink, and you know, just sitting there and doing nothing. You know, that isn't the community. It's design, it's veterinary science, it's medicine, it's modeling, it's, you know, having a major impact on the world. So I'm going to cover sort of 3 areas, and if I look like I'm looking off to either side, I've got 3 monitors. So I've got my presentation on the left, the display on the right, and you in the middle. So excuse me if I seem to be darting from side to side. But we will look at hopefully engaging students in the early instances of Key Stage 3, and how we can possibly get people on board and engaged. Then how that will move into GCSE, and how the new updates to GCSE will affect that, and the power that we have to start looking sort of longer term, and getting, as I say, this longitudinal idea. So starting projects in year 7 and 8, which we can then build on and develop through into GCSE, while still supporting the delivery of the GCSE curriculum. And then how that builds into A level. I think the equally encouraging point that I've seen sort of stats-wise, some entries, is that A level is rapidly expanding as well. And again, that's absolutely brilliant. You know, we don't think we could have predicted such a huge increase in A level, but proportionally, we are a rapidly growing subject at A level, and you know, that's because teachers are making it exciting, are engaging students, and it's gaining a lot more traction in the curriculum more generally. Just a quick cover. I know there's OCR branding on these, but quite a lot of this is personal thought. It's not necessarily the one and only way to do it, or advocating one particular way. So, you know, this is linked into our specification, but I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there which is really, really good, and in no way, shape or form could I ever summarize all of the awesome stuff that's going on. And hopefully the ideas today are more going to be a fuel that you could take to put on, you know, the chats that you have more locally with more local CAS communities, with other teachers in your area, on forums, and so on, to really explore what is out there, and fish out what does really work. And then, you know, we can take that and build on it as a community to reinforce again, and keep pushing forward the great work that everybody's doing. So I think the first thing we need to break the stigma of is computer science sort of feeling actually that quite a lot of it's boring, that programming is quite stodgy and difficult, you know, and getting across to students from an early age that computer science is a really fun and practical subject. You know, it's not all coding. There's a lot of stuff we can do which isn't at a computer, which still reinforces computer science principles. You know, there are lots of problem solving, sorting and searching algorithms, breaking things down into problems and tasks, you know, even playing games and having fun, all reinforce quite a lot of the sort of spatial skills and the excitement of computing. And it takes confidence to kind of break out of holding on to sort of the life raft of, I've just started teaching, I just want to get curriculum taught. And you know, I was definitely there when I first started teaching ICT, and it takes a couple of years to have that confidence that the way and the pedagogy that you're using is good, and then looking at expanding that and developing that further. So just making it fun, you know, having pupils just walk in at the start of a lesson, and you know, there might be a quick card game or a searching and sorting sort of card activity. There could be Towers of Hanoi. There could be you know, little online websites with logic problems and things to work your way through. You know, all of these are really good at actually passively building the skills that they need for component node 2, and definitely make good starter activities, good home-based learning activities, and so on. How can we hook students into you know, computer science generally? Well, feeder primaries are already doing IT in Scratch. And I had a good chat as part of a discussion with the CAS working group about primary school transition, and how are we actually transitioning from curriculum, or is it actually a continuous curriculum, and are we actually just transitioning in the way, or the differences between how a primary curriculum sort of feel in a school is set up with a secondary way of teaching. So a lot of sort of good work is definitely taking place with primaries, linking in with what are they doing, what areas are they focusing on, how can a secondary support a primary so that they have maybe transition projects which they will start at the end of year 6 and they can then carry on building on in year 7, so that they already have a comfortable feel and security in the knowledge that what they're doing in primary is affecting what they will be doing in secondary, and having a good link between those is definitely going to help sort of keep students engaged in ICT and computer science more specifically. I think probably on the activities wise and the career path, we're very hooked, and I think there is a very heavy games present and an element in the computer science industry. You look at the figures for what the gaming sector is worth, and it's a massive sector. But if we're looking at gender balance and neutrality, I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of other core areas that we could probably build into our curriculum, and have a look at those, and have a look at which are likely to be more generic, which are probably likely to attract a wider and more diverse sort of background of student. And then really link that into, this is the power of being a computer scientist. It's the one, well, not the one, but definitely one of the subjects where by 17 or 18, if they're really switched on and focused, they can already start creating through apps for goods or through local projects, some really powerful and impactful programs, even if that sort of looks fairly cheap and cheerful, using sort of Arduinos or Raspberry Pis, physical stuff. There's a lot of brilliant stuff going on there that we can showcase to students and use as inspiration. And it's not just adults doing this, this is us as a community. This is students of 12, 10, 16, 18, and really show them that this isn't a nerdy old thing of sort of a 40-year-old or 16 or 18-year-old just sat on their own in the dark web hacking, and try and break that stereotypical image. So how does that feed into the Key Stage 3 curriculum? I blogged recently on how to use our entry level in computer science. We're the only exam board that does have an entry level, and many centres are using that as a loose framework on which to hang Key Stage 3 schemes of work. And it comes with standardized tests that are deliverable in class. They're 30 minutes and can be used to help guide and really get a benchmark for how students are progressing through the sort of computer science side of what is already quite a crammed Key Stage 3 curriculum. But there are also other, really cool things out there that can just help inspire. And again, we don't endorse directly any of these at the moment. These are the ones just off the top of my head when I was creating the presentation and went through and did some brief searches. And I'm sure there are many other projects out there that, as I said, in more local groups, you can have a chat and discuss and, work together with other schools and say, well, if we're doing this unit of work and you're doing that unit of work, let's sit down, let's look at the good points, what really worked. Maybe we can share resources and help each other out with the planning. So the micro bits are an obvious one in some ways, because it was a couple of years now that the BBC basically gave micro bits to every year 7. A lot of schools still have access to those, and they're really good for encouraging teamwork and small fun group projects. I will declare an interest here because I was asked to judge at the Vex Robotics competitions, but it's really great in Telford seeing students of all ages competing against each other, doing some pretty awesome stuff with robotics. And they've just released a drag and drop environment and revamped it now so it works with Python as well, and it can flip between the two. Raspberry Pis, again, have been around for a long time, and really good at engaging students in programming. but also they can be used to link into networking projects and programming and looking at operating systems, and they can just keep building. So it's not just necessarily one tool for one job, it's looking at how we can link all of these things in together and keep that continuity rather between discrete sort of ideas and discrete exercises, but actually meshing these together and saying, well, actually we've used a Raspberry Pi on their own to create a short program, but what we can now do is look at how we can network them. Oh, look, and now we can look at programming so that they can communicate across this network, and then that builds into protocols and layers, and it starts covering a huge amount of just ideas early on in curriculum that can slowly sort of sit there and percolate, and then as you move up through the years you can start building that foundational knowledge on, going back, rechecking they've understood it, building a bit more on, dropping back, and etc., and it adds this long-term vision. And I think having a look at that and linking that into careers and how that will affect students early on in their computer science sort of journey will really help engagement. There are lots of cool programming things out there. Code Combat is good. What's the other one? Lightbot, is another cool little thing that they can just play around with, that's really friendly. It's visual, it's interactive, but goes over some really core fundamentals. The CS Unplugged resources are really good. And again, it's not about computer science is just sitting at a computer all the time. And again, oops, sorry, I think that's an extra return. That CS Unplugged should all be on one line because they're the same hyperlink. So, as I said, there is lots of stuff out there. We don't endorse any particular one aspect. However, do go out there and have a look, chat with primaries, see what they're doing, have that sort of mesh as to, well, if you're doing this areas, I know that this area is going to be fine in year 7, and then maybe look at building other projects that will either consolidate or help primaries to develop knowledge in other areas. And that way, that sort of continual flow from year 6 into year 7, year 8 will be nice, reaffirming for candidates, and hopefully keep them engaged in what is a pretty awesome subject, personally speaking. So my thoughts, if I was back in teaching at the moment, I would use the entry level as a loose scheme of work. There's no commitment to have to pay for entries or anything. It is free. My webcam's gone weird. There we go. But it does help. And again, we've got these standardized tests that are free to download and interchange that you can just give to students as many times as you like. There's no limit on that. And that way you can actually take quite a lot of the GCSE resources and cut out the sort of GCSE depth of content and understanding. And because they're going over similar topics and then rebuilding that knowledge, it helps to cement it. It allows recall to take place, and it adds that thread of continuity through it. Projects are, in my experience, the way I would try and deliver it. Linking a project that they can again build on slowly, trying to get how that will cross-link into different areas of the curriculum, and using sort of small projects to then help encourage them to build into maybe starting to play with things at home. I guess COVID has really highlighted the challenge of that digital divide and access to equipment outside of school for a lot of students. But I think once the enthusiasm starts, having coding clubs or computer science clubs, or linking in with DT if they're making a car, for instance, then why not have a look at, can we now program this car? There are lots of cheap drones coming out, which a lot of the software could be workable on a mobile phone. So getting those real hooks, and not just the traditional ones, but looking at how computer science affects veterinary science. How does it affect use COVID? How does computer science actually affect the decisions about lockdown, or why we decided to take some actions rather than others through big data, and digging through and analyzing all of that. I was hooked on Minions. when I was at school, still am, I guess, and used to use those as my reward schemes. So, having some sort of progress or award badges, of where they've got to, basic competencies, and it doesn't just need to be in one area. If they can take programming skills and apply them to lots of different areas, but just sort of some sort of motivational to keep students engaged. There are lots of coding competitions. I mean, a whole host of them out there, which could again be used to really act as bait, as it were, just to get them hooked in. The cybersecurity challenges, another good example of fun challenge, and I think every pupil is competitive in some way, shape, or form. So using those sort of outlets through Key Stage 3, but again, making sure those outlets have that real thread of, oh, we'll be doing this at GCSE, but just in a bit more depth. You've already mastered sequence selection and iteration by the end of year 8. What we're going to actually then move on to do in GCSE is looking at doing this, which builds on those skills. That will give them hopefully more confidence and reassurance that GCSE isn't as hard as I think a lot of students feel it is at the moment, or it definitely appears to be. There's some interesting research that spatial skills are a good predictor for GCSE computing outcomes, or at least computing outcomes generally. It was done in America, so it was introductory to computing. There's again some evidence, although it's not 100% concrete, that there might be sort of a correlation between building spatial skills and helping training spatial skills, and how that might potentially increase progression through computer science. So whilst it's not nailed on at the moment, I think there's enough there that I would be wanting to encourage these spatial skills, especially from an early age. I think I would be relatively fair in saying that we recognize that some bright pupils who are academically able find breaking problems down and putting those into code very, very challenging. And it's not always the brightest pupils as defined by Key Stage 2 data, which make the best programmers or similar. And I think that links into another interesting question about how are we assessing computer science and measuring it? And spatial skills and that sort of ability to take problems, break it down and manipulate them is something which takes a long time to practice. So if there was one thing that I would put into Key Stage 3, it would be fun, engaging activities that build those problem solving skills, as that seems to be the biggest sort of challenge or bridge when they get to GCSE, of how well they progress through the component 2 and the programming side. So I am slightly wary that time is already escaping me. I've technically got 20 minutes, but I wanted to finish in about 10. So I'll keep pushing forward at the moment. I think there is only one question, and that's about whether or not you get access to the presentation. So as far as I'm aware, Tim, you can probably confirm this, but I imagine this is going to be made accessible to all after today. So
yes, there is one more question as well. Yeah, there's a couple of other. You okay for me to ask them now?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
What other areas would you include in Key Stage 3 schemes of work? I think you've kind of gone over some of that already, but
yeah, I mean, effectively the entry level gives the computer science side. What else would I include? I mean, there's loads. I think you're already delivering e-safety and digital skills. We had a very interesting discussion about whether or not the access to actually a desktop computer rather than a tablet from primary is holding students back. And other ththings I'd include are basically, I would definitely look to have some of those more fundamental IT skills there, insofar as how to use Microsoft Word and position boxes and format documents effectively in year 7, because I have taught students, a few years ago, but even then, who really struggled with some basic stuff like formatting and aligning and presenting documents and so on. And that is a core business skill as well. So it's not necessarily all about computer science in Key Stage 3, but the sort of soft skills that I think we look at, and we kind of assume that desktops are generally widespread, aren't. That there is a lot of touchscreen use now, and especially in primary schools, it's easy, they're portable, you can carry them around. I've got a Surface sat literally right next to me that I use for work because it's portable, but it's not as powerful and it's not as useful as a desktop for a day-to-day thing. So I think we need to get that balance early on and give them the confidence in those skills to be able to actually access the curriculum using a desktop. So any other stuff, I mean, have a look at the entry-level curriculum and then just think, what is missing? What would students want as well as this? The entry-level curriculum you can probably deliver in an average cohort probably in about a year and a half, maybe. It's designed to be a 2-year curriculum for learners who are not at level 1. So GCSE starts here at level 1, entry level sits below. So actually you'd expect them to be at a sort of level 1 level at the start of year 10, and then they build on that into sort of the level 2 by the end of year 11. So for most mainstream schools, that entry level would sit in year 8, maybe year 9. So there's year 7 to do other stuff in there as well, and really get again, we were talking in the working group about sort of having some sort of benchmark and assessment to make sure that students from the whole range of feeder primaries that come in have that opportunity to sort of benchmark and realign and make sure they're all at that standard level. And again, that's where discussion early with primaries to identify where those early gaps might be would then build into a transition program, or help feed lesson plans back into primary to help them cover any gaps which may be there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of just the points on that. There was as part of the CAS Virtual Showcase, there was a session on Key Stage 3 schemes of work, and that recording will be available soon after this week. So that's really worth tuning into because it covers a lot of these areas. I don't know. I would also recommend the NCCE, the free resources that are being developed on their website, because there's a lot of really good stuff there that you can download and use as part of your Key Stage 3 delivery as well. Someone's actually asked, is there an entry-level scheme of work available? So there are. I mean, what else would you say there is, Karadig, apart from that people can access?
From OCR's point of view, not much. I mean, we are predominantly focused on examinations as a board, and the entry level is a useful exam and a certified kind of test point, if you want to view it that way. We wouldn't specifically produce a scheme of work for Key Stage 3 because that's out of our remit, but it's looking at how we as a board can help sort of structure that, and if we can provide, as we are doing through the entry level, a validated assessment tool that will help you sort of assess where learners are, then that's what we have. Beyond that, as you've mentioned, there are lots of other outlets which aren't OCR that can support the Key Stage 3 progress and structure. So
I'm going to take one more question very quickly and then you can continue. I think we'll save some to the end. Would BBRAS or BEBRAS, I can't remember how to pronounce it, be good to use for spatial skills?
Yep. I mean, absolutely. Anything which is down that sort of thinking about it, having to take yourself outside of the box, as it were, to see problems, to solve challenges. BEBRAS, absolutely. There are lots of sort of spatial training games and stuff out there as well. But basically, the sort of taking a shape, being able to rotate it and look at the net and which is the correct net, or what are the next things in this particular sequence. All of those sort of problems are basically pattern analysis and prediction. And therefore, when you're programming, those are the sort of skills that you will need to sort of look forward to break a problem down and to look at potential solutions. So anything down those lines, yes. Again, I wouldn't endorse any one over the other, but it's a chance to explore, see what hooks your pupils in, and chat with other teachers and see what they do.
Brilliant. I say we'll save questions now to the end, so you can continue. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes for questions. Yeah.
No problem. Cool. Okay, so let's have a look at GCSE. So we've got this lovely rich Key Stage 3 pulling in. Why is that important? It's important because, especially with our GCSE, there is now absolutely no limit at all on what you can choose to do as programming activities within the classroom. There are some core things which I think it's definitely worth reinforcing. The statement that you sign or will be signing for J277 merely says that you have offered students the ability or the experience, the chance to experience having written high-level programs using a text-based language, and therefore they will have been through the design, write, test, refine process. If they've done that, and I'm being very obtuse here, but if they've done that for 30 minutes and you've designed, written, tested, and refined Hello World, and you've done one lesson on that, technically you've met the requirements because they have been given the opportunity to. I would absolutely say that is not best practice, but effectively, those are the only bounds which you have to meet. So when people say, can we use this particular program, or could we do this particular project? The core question is, out of those four things, does it at least do one of them? Does it help them experience designing, writing, testing, or refining a program? And if it does more than one of those, brilliant. Does it use a text-based language? If it does, absolutely. Does it always need to be text-based? No, actually. You know, the big push has been in J275, NEA, or at least at that point it was the coursework units A452, A453, J276. It is 20% of you writing a text-based language, and you are assessed on that effectively, along with the design, write, test, refine things. Programming project, we've now this is the final year of it coming up for 2021, but those restrictions have been removed a bit. It's now a lot more flexible, and it can be more used like a teaching tool. J277, they can work in groups, they can work individually, they can do literally any programming work that you like, as long as they design, write, test, and refine a program using a high-level language. You're not going to be asked for samples. You will just be asked to say that you've given candidates that opportunity. We do not prescribe any activity that you must do, although we do offer the programming challenges. We have collated the more extended programming projects into a booklet, and we've got a condensed version of the programming challenges, which are 10 programming challenges, which if you choose to deliver those over the 2 years, not a problem. You'll have given those candidates the opportunity to have experienced all the programming skills. Use those again if you like. But you actually have utter freedom to do what you want now. If you've got 3 or 4 students who are really strong and engaged and want to go off and you know, work together using GitHub to produce a text-based game or something, you know, with visual interface, they can go away and do that. You know, there's no limit on where and when they practice these skills. They just need to have experienced them by the time May the 15th of whatever year exam entry they're doing. You know, you could actually give them programs which have been pre-written and then encourage them to look at them and test and refine those programs. So there really is ultimate flexibility from a teacher's point of view in what you can do in the classroom. So how does that affect your delivery? Well, if you're having smaller microbit projects, or you're using Vex, for instance, who have Scratch or at least a blocks-based language, that can then transition into it converts it into Python. So you can then start having those transitional experiences. You know, you might have a really simple microbit program that if you type in a particular number, it works out whether that's too hot or too cold for the greenhouse. But then at GCSE, you can extend that and then start programming it to collect data from sensors. You know, you might work with a basic program which does a very, very simple chatbot or learning experience. But then you can start building more GCSE skills onto that. So again, rather than having this sort of arbitrary, and I say arbitrary, obviously it's designed for assessment, but this sort of end project of 20 hours, that has absolutely been thrown out of the window now. You do not have to deliver 20 hours or more than 20 hours or less than 20 hours on any one particular thing. So long as you are experiencing or giving candidates a chance at least to experience using a high-level language in text, and that they have designed, written, tested, and refined a program, you're done. That is literally all we're asking you to do. I put this in because actually the last point is important, that some students might struggle using some of the more advanced features that we would expect them to be able to grasp at GCSE, like subprograms, parameter parsing, file writing. Some of these are actually quite complex skills because they require solid understanding of other skills around it. But again, it's the experience, not being a master of. So there's nothing to stop you if you have used visual languages to keep using visual languages with students who find the curriculum more challenging, as long as they have seen how that works in a text-based language, can play around with it. It doesn't need to be the only thing or the only language they use. So for stronger students, you might have a 100% text-based curriculum. For weaker students, you might encourage them to explore these text-based components because you need to do that. But actually, it might be a slower transition, and you can also then still continue to use some of the visual languages to reinforce the more sort of these concepts and help build their confidence up in paper 2 through different means as well. So this is potentially the advantage and the flexibility that we have now within this. So I think also we tend, and I know this is a challenge with budgets, etc., but going out on trips is interesting. I've seen sort of virtual museum tours, and obviously when COVID and distancing allows, getting out, and not just to museums or the obvious ones like Bletchley Park, but theme parks, going around Boeing Aerospace or a car production plant. I know I went round, what was it called, Jaguar Land Rover in Liverpool when I was up in Liverpool, and just having a look at the programming and the IT that was in there was absolutely phenomenal. So, again, if you can think outside the box, where can we go? Can we team up with other schools to make costs cheaper or similar? But going out and having a look at other ideas, definitely absolutely all for that. And I think it's important to add here that we are doing a good job. It has been a very challenging time for many people, but the number of people, student-wise, who are moving on to A-level now is massive. It is grown from 5,000 or 6,000 up to 7,500, and it's still growing. I think we're up to maybe 10,000 students this year. So we are doing a lot of good work, good practice, engaging students. So this isn't a start from scratch idea. This is a building on what we're already doing, and also reflecting that we are doing a great job. I say we, I'm not a teacher anymore, but teachers on the ground floor are doing a fantastic job at engaging and getting students to progress and move on towards A-level. So please do keep up that good work. It's absolutely brilliant to see. This is mostly about GCSE, so I'm just going to tack this on to the end loosely over the next 3 or 4 minutes. But actually, as I said, people are moving on to A-level, and you can, for those students who are likely to move on, you can structure GCSE to match the A-level project. It is definitely, again, looking at that thread of continuation. Why do I have to do this at GCSE? Well, it builds into A-level. You're going to do this at university. Again, it's that thread and the long-term journey of students who want to move on to do computer science, beyond GCSE. The flexibility at GCSE matches our flexibility at A-level. As long as they cover the spec points, we don't have a limit on text-based languages. You can use virtually any language you like, as long as it is predominantly text-based. Projects, if you start doing cybersecurity programming projects at GCSE, then the students can take those GCSE projects and look to expand and develop them at A-level. So again, you can have this thread of interest now, that if your students have specific areas that they want to investigate and they say, can we go and do a project linked to X? You can just go and say, is it in text? Yes. Will they design, write, test, refine any of those areas? Yes. If so, go ahead and do it. Obviously reliant on your confidence and willingness, I guess, to kind of let students go off and do what they want. But that thread is definitely there. We've seen lots of artificial intelligence, games, cybersecurity, people writing their own compilers, their own operating systems at A level. So I would really encourage you to don't be afraid at GCSE just to kind of stick to Hello World. And I know Hello World as a program gets a battering, and I say this tongue in cheek, but do give the stronger students the opportunity to push forwards. Our A-level project is really flexible. You don't have to include any particular set of skills. We look at a scope for a project, not a tick list of requirements, unlike some boards. So yes, A-level is challenging, but again, if we can link the GCSE, and there's a lot of crossover topic-wise in GCSE and A-level, so you can start teasing people in and saying, well, actually, we're looking at this at a GCSE level. This is going to be covered in A-level. You're going to expand it a little bit further if you're interested, and just start meshing in, this is why we're doing it and this is where it's going to lead you to. I've been talking a lot with Raspberry Pi Foundation because I've been working with Cambridge University on the Isaac Computing. Great resource. It's in its early stages yet, and it is quite text heavy at the moment with some good questioning going on. But again, it's a developing resource that will help those students who might want to look at A-level, who are currently working in GCSE, go and give them an experience of it. This is something they can use outside. We've had discussions, about linking projects into the extended project qualification. We've had some emails through saying, so-and-so is doing an EPQ. This is what they want to produce. The programming side of what they want to produce, can that be part of their A-level project? And as long as they're not dual marked, then yes, it can fit into the EPQ, and the EPQ is definitely a great supportive qualification for students moving on to university. How else? I know a lot of companies have social responsibility sort of teams who look at engaging in local schools. There are lots of ways of doing that, and I think the recent sort of COVID challenge has proven how flexible we can be in digital submission. There's nothing I could be a university lecturer or a PhD student sitting behind a webcam having a live chat session with a class and doing something similar. So where possible, again, share good links. I know companies get stretched because some areas have got less access to companies in their area, but I think with the digital sort of move that we've had, sort of forced upon us really, there's lots of now opportunities to experience whether companies could reach out to schools through these methods. So my closing points, because I've got 3 minutes left. Basically, awesome job. Computer science has grown massively over the years. A-level is growing really strongly. There is loads of support out there, and definitely from our point of view as an exam board, if you have ideas, let us know. The GCSE was redeveloped with masses of teacher input, not redeveloped, but at least adapted for this J277. It's been absolutely brilliant getting your ideas on board and hopefully creating a spec that is now really flexible and will allow you to be really creative within the classroom. We have, I think most people know about the A-level, GCSE and entry-level Facebook groups. If you don't know what they are, do email the computerscience@ocr.org.uk email address. We can give you the links for those. And my final sort of plea is we are seeing a lot of centres, moving over to OCR or starting A-level or starting computer science for the first time with us. So if that is you, you're either moving from another board, first time teaching, or at least even just transitioning to J277, do let us know, because it helps us know where to plan events, know where to put hopefully more face-to-face networks, etc. And get your feedback 24/7. So thank you very much. I'll shut up now and allow a few questions. And thank you for being here, and hopefully this has proved useful and food for thought.
Kerridick, thank you very much. We've only got time for a couple of questions, so I'm going to apologise to those people who I haven't been able to ask their question for. I've tried to go through the questions that I can answer ahead of time as well. Quick questions. So, is there such a thing as a baseline test for autumn year 10?
I would say entry level. I mean, I know I keep banging on about it, but entry level is just below that level 1. So if they're at the beginning of year 10 and you do an entry level test, you will be able to see where potential gaps in knowledge are. So I wouldn't call it a baseline officially, but it's definitely a resource you could use to do something similar. There are also ideas on diagnostic questions, Project Quantum, and I think there's moves to try and get some sort of idea of a level of baselining through that platform as well.
Brilliant. We had a question about how best is it to transition students from GCSE to A-level with regards to the programming project. I think we've kind of done some of that. But,
yeah, I mean, the only difference between kind of GCSE and A-level is that object-oriented work, which can be quite a big step up conceptually. If students are used to more procedural programming, so they're using methods and functions regularly in their programming, then the sort of join between procedural programming and object-oriented is a closer parallel. But if you're looking to transition, I would get them looking at that sort of object-oriented side, and also just sort of making sure that they're confident in Boolean logic, because the Carnot maps and Boolean expressions and De Morgan's law, etc., start to ramp up quite quickly. So sort of any work you can do to get them familiar with that is probably going to be the other sticking point where students find challenge.
Question regarding the EPQ, blending the A-level project and with the EPQ, some clarification on what that means.
I think the best thing to do on that one is if you email the computerscience@ocr.org.uk and just address it to me, I'll pick that up, and then I can probably have a phone conversation with you about that. But very broadly, the EPQ is a research thing where you produce an artifact at the end of it. It's a qualification on the OCR website at the moment. So there's an opportunity to do programming as part of producing something. So it might be the artifact is a robot which is, does some basic tasks for somebody who might be visually impaired. The overall artifact is going to be the robot doing stuff. The programming could then be part of an A-level project side of it, but obviously they're going to need to build the robot as well, which wouldn't be counted, and so on. But have a look at the EPQ on the OCR website, and then email the computerscience@ocr.org.uk address, and I can get back to you and we can have a further chat.
Great. I've just pinged that email address into the chat for everyone so they know who to contact.
I mean, if there are any questions, sorry, Tim, which can't be answered, I'm either happy to, if you want to collate them, and then I can do a general email or FAQ, which can be then spread, or just email the computerscience@ocr.org.uk and I will answer those questions directly from there.
Great stuff. Okay, so we are out of time, unfortunately. So I'm very sorry if I haven't been able to answer haven't been able to ask questions to Keradig. I'm going to make a note of these questions, Keradig, and I will ping you a screenshot of what I've got, if that's okay with you.
If there are any other J277 questions, we do have an all-day drop-in session next Thursday, where you can just sign up in Eventbrite, grab a ticket. Whenever you're free, just dive in, and 3 subject advisors will be waiting for your questions. So again, if you've got any other questions you want to ask, do use that Thursday session as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so coming up at 1 p.m, Dale Lane is going to be running a session on machine learning for kids at Key Stage 3. And at 2 p.m, you'll have a choice of two sessions. You can join me with Pete Marshman for a session on secondary computing and the new Ofsted inspection framework, or you can join Stuart Ball for a session on microbit recipes. So lots of simple starter microbit activities for non-specialists. So those are your 3 remaining choices of CAS Virtual 20. So thank you so much for coming. At the end of the session, a survey will pop up in your browser. So please take a moment to feedback on the session. And also, if you have comments, please do share them on Twitter using the hashtag CAS Virtual 20. In the meantime, Keradig, thank you. And
pleasure as always.
Thank you to everyone for attending. And I wish you all a really fantastic weekend. Thank you all.
Cheers.